Ok. ¿Puedes pararte? Sí, please.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you for this space. Thank you for sharing information with us. I have one question for you.
Do you hear well, Majid?
Yes and no. Let's continue.
No, come on. Maybe.
Okay.
Come on.
Thank you. I have.
Acércate.
Here?
Sí. He's coming. Wait.
Hello. Can you see me?
Yes, it's better.
Okay, thank you for this space. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I have one question for you. What is the next steps or how you see the future in the Flutter environment and technology? What is the next steps? Because there are very weird, maybe the new technologies. There are one competition with Kotlin because Kotlin is right now publish new features for deploying iOS and other world. And it's interesting for the new interviews with the people search technologies, specific technologies, but they in the interview ask how cover or reach the multi-platform with the native applications, and this done well. And the question is how you see the future and how you see the next steps in Flutter. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I love the question. And especially with, I don't know if you already have seen some drama that has happened since yesterday in Flutter community. I want to talk about that a little bit and say, so take a look at Flutter 6-7 years ago and take a look at it today, right? So the progress of evolving this framework is just massive. From a community of a few people, we turned into millions of developers. These are not going to go away in one night. So just don't worry about it. And a lot of people, like a lot of developers, are just doing their work right now in enterprise companies without even noticing things are happening around them, right? Because they need to deliver to their business. That's one thing. And another thing is, and all frameworks around React Native, Vue.js, Angular, or whatever else that you can name it, if they don't really keep them up to date, and Flutter is not an exception here, and if they don't really listen to their communities, if they don't come up with the new innovative features and then make the customers that are using that, let's say us, developers, kind of happy, they're going to die. But are you really seeing right now Flutter is going that direction? Are they really do not listen to us? Are they really not delivering what they need to deliver? And imagine Flutter right now is a mature framework. 3 years ago, you could have seen Flutter every 6 months. There is a new feature coming, new platform coming. But right now, it's a mature, very mature framework where you probably don't see quite often new features are coming, but you will see that it's getting more and more and more stable, right? So, and that's the way it goes. And there's millions of dollars as investment in Flutter. So it's not going to go away in one night, right? There are other frameworks, there are other players coming. Each of them will have their own use case, right? So people are talking about Kotlin multi-platform. People are talking about React Native got 500x faster and blah, blah. They are all true. But does it mean that at some point you're going to stop writing your Flutter code and just because multi-platform got better, you just refactor everything to that? Probably not. That's one thing. The second one is just think about it. If you are in a stack, in a tech stack, that makes sense to use Flutter, you're going to use Flutter. But if you are in another tech stack that is like dominated with Java and Kotlin, then probably you're going to use multi-platform Kotlin, right? So these things are really natural, I guess, in the tech community. I've been as a software developer like for 18 years. I've seen like languages coming, some languages already gone. I've seen frameworks are coming and they are gone. So I've seen that. But what I see right now, the way that these frameworks right now are around, React Native, Flutter, and these main ones, the mainstream ones, they're not going to go away that soon that you are worried, at least in the next 10 years. Let's put it that way. I see a bright future for Flutter. There are a lot of big companies, enterprises are using that without maybe you noticing even. I work at Microsoft right now, and I can tell you that there are also some initiatives even inside Microsoft just using Flutter, or they have used Flutter. So, so there are passionate people, that are what I'm gonna say. It doesn't matter where we work, it doesn't matter what we do. It's still there are passionate people about this framework, and they are promoting that, they're using that, and that's gonna happen everywhere. I'm just gonna say, in short, just don't worry. If you like the technology, if you're already enjoying using that, if you are delivering a good product with Flutter, keep doing that, because it's not gonna go away. Guarantee.
Thank you, Majid. I think we don't have space for more questions because we have to stream your video right now. But thank you for being here, for the community, for us, and for take us. And thank you for any word that you gave us. It is having you and your advices is a great opportunity to LATAM community. Hopefully we will gonna have you again in LATAM. So everyone, todos denle un aplauso a Majid, agradecimiento. And
Thank you very much.
see you the next floor Conf LATAM. Bye bye.
See you.
Well, now voy a pasarles. Bye bye, Machi. Ok. Vamos a cerrar el estudio ahorita. Y vamos a pasar
And I am 100% sure you are, because
la
hello, my
transmisión de
friends in
Majid.
Flutter Latin. And I hope you are enjoying your time so far.
Sorry. Espérame. Ok. Un minutito. Ok, está en lo más alto.
Far in the conference.
¿Lo escuchan? ¿No? ¿Me pueden ayudar? Sí.
I'm 100% sure you are, because I've been there. Hello, my friends in Flutter Latin. And I hope you are enjoying your time so far in the conference. And I am 100% sure you are, because I've been there last year. I cannot be with you this year. I am very sad with that. But at the same time, a little bit happy because I was given this opportunity to talk to you, at least virtually. Thanks for having me, at least among yourself. I know you are very warm, you're very welcoming in LATAM. I really appreciate that. Even though I'm not with you in person, but my soul and heart is with you, believe me. So I'm gonna use my chance and talk about design patterns, the practical design patterns. Obviously, we cannot go through all the different design patterns, and I'm not gonna tell you like 25, 30 different design patterns, but I picked some of them that I think they are very practical in terms of developing Flutter applications. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about that. And we're going to talk about 5 design patterns. I will talk pretty speedy, but don't worry. You'll get the slides, you'll get the sample codes, everything. Don't worry about that at the end of the presentation. But my main point is to just show you how, even if you don't know design patterns, today in your Flutter application, you're using some of these patterns without you noticing that. And how you can optimize for utilizing these design patterns a bit better. If you know the patterns itself, to be a little bit more inspired and then use that. A couple of these design patterns actually very specific to Flutter, maybe like creating a closed hierarchy with seal. this is not part of like necessarily the original book, but this is something that we use or we can use in Flutter as well. But let's get into it. For those who don't know me, my name is Majid. I am one of the Flutter GDs and also a community lead, as well as a lot of leaders here. I also wrote a book called Flutter Engineering. When I was drafting the book, I was like thinking about these design patterns. Where can I put this in my book? And how should I bring it up? Because a lot of these concepts about design patterns are like very engineering based and sometimes hard to understand and even hard to apply to what you're doing, because these were created way back for object-oriented programming languages and so on and so forth. So that today we need to a little bit modernize it and maybe even apply it to our Flutter application. I want to give a shout out to Mangridas. He created flutterdesignpatterns.com. It's actually consists of all of the design patterns from the gang of 4. So you can actually take a look at the website. Great source, so much into details, UMLs, if you are a very big fan of those kind of things. He reviewed my chapter, and I can say that some of these codes are reviewed by expert. But design patterns. The thing is that design patterns are not the way that you exactly solve the problem. That's the misunderstanding when it comes to design patterns. We think that, oh, if I know right now singleton, for example, the problem is solved. That's not the case. I think we should be clear here why we need to learn design patterns. What it does is actually shows how, in which way you can solve the problem. And this is very important because it means that design patterns is not here just to help you to design, but it's also here, it is actually here to help you to communicate better. It's a communication tools. So in an original, for example, book, this is like very traditional, right? So 3 different categories, and each of these categories are actually dealing with something with the object, right? But what I'm going to say today is not just going through that. I'm just going to convey another message today, hopefully. The design pattern is actually a shared language that you need to know, just like Dart, that you know some of them and you just talk in your team and everyone understands. And if you just go through these design patterns and get yourself familiar, not memorize it, not just have it as a Bible and just implement it every day in your code, it means that you're going to have a common language in your team. When a problem comes, you may have some idea how to solve it, and then you can say, hey, this is actually similar to singleton. Maybe we should apply that. But the good thing, the interesting thing here is that all of these design patterns, 25, 30, whatever, that looks like a hammer. If you know all of them, tomorrow go to work and say, okay, today I'm going to choose this one to implement. That's like a hammer, and then you look at everywhere and nails. You just want to just crush it. Don't be that hammer. That's what I'm going to say. We need to find out how to solve the problems, and these are the tools in our tool set. Just like any person who is going to work with a screwdriver, if you have sometimes a manual one, it solves one problem, but if you have the electric one, it solves a different problem. So that's why I wanted to bring you to 5 of these design patterns to see how we're solving the problems in Flutter application with these, and probably also already doing that as well. But let's get to one of these, factory method. This is one of the design patterns that you already are using, that I bet all of you in Flutter application. You can imagine of this pattern as solving a problem that is going to help you to create subclasses, which is going to make sure that let's put it this way. Let's give you an example. Imagine now you have a factory and there are different ways to ship your product, whether with ships, whether with airplanes or trucks. So this way that you can define to reach to your goal is the way that we call it factory method. It's just a live example. Let's put it into code and I explain a bit more what it does. technically, you're going to have an abstract, let's say, class that every other subtypes is going to implement that. And you're going to have a method which is going to create this. All right? But why? Then based on implementation of this, extending or implementing this abstract, you're going to have this create method that is going to specifically for each of these factory methods abstract away the implementation. That's one of the things that we're going to solve. We're going to abstract away using this implementation without touching them directly. All right? So then I bet you're using this example in your application already, where you have these kind of elf and if, and you go through each of these factories. And if you look at this by now, the factories are not doing anything until you call this explicit create widget. And that's where you are building your widget. It's going to get interesting when you actually apply that with a default method. Look at this example right now. Let's say I'm going to create a widget creator. So I have my factory method to be implemented by subclasses here to implement the concurrent examples. All right, sounds good. Then I'm going to have a default method, which is going to build my widget even by creating those subclasses already here. All right, this is getting a little bit more interesting. So when is going to be useful? What kind of problem we're solving here in this case? So imagine a great example from Flutter, the design patterns website by Mangridas. I actually want to repeat that because it's a great example for this pattern. Imagine how many of you are building like custom dialogue to show in different platforms differently based on the UIs? I bet all of you are doing that, right? Or at least having some kind of widget that needs to be shown in different platforms differently. So this custom dialog is going to have a show method, which is going to actually create the subtype and then show that. Or why this is going to be useful, then you're going to have your implementation, like Android dialog or iOS, for example. When you are going to use that, you just need to call show method, and it's going to just build everything for you. Combining this with a default method is going to be a powerful tool under your control. Let's take into another example right now. Sorry, another pattern. Decorator. So all of us are wearing the clothes when we're going out, right? It depends on the day. You may have a different decorate on yourself. Like today is rainy, I'm going to have a rain jacket. Tomorrow is hot, I'm going to have t-shirt, and so on and so forth. The decorator purpose is to help you to have a decorated widget and then applying different filter to it, either by sequence or differently. So an example here is a text. So typically what you do here, you're going to have an abstract class that all the subtype of the decorated widgets are going to implement that. Which in this case, I just have a very fairly simple example. Imagine this is just going to render a text, a simple text, okay? So now I want to, in different scenarios in my application, apply different filters to this text. Sometimes having a border, sometimes having a padding, and sometimes a background. Or maybe sometimes all of them together. So what I can do is that I can actually create a decorator right now. It's an abstract that is just going to define the decorator class for me. So it just accepts that decorated widget, okay? And then it applies the filter that you want to apply to this widget. For example, in this case, I'm going to add a border. In this case, I'm going to add a padding. And in this case, I have another class that it says background text, just adding the background. So I'm trying to abstract or make a separation concern. So my simple widget doesn't deal with any of these filters anymore. Actually, I put it into the subtypes, subclasses so that I can deal with it separately. So what happens is that right now, I can go ahead and use my base component or base widget, in this case, my simple text, and then try to apply or pass it down to different filters. Now give me a border or give me a little bit padding, and then at the end, just build what you want. This looks a bit not Flutterish, right? So we can make it a bit better. In fact, I was playing around in a project and I came up with the chain decorators. It's also a thing in a lot of design patterns by other softwares. What we can do, instead of having the decorators separately, we can actually create a chain text decorator in here. What it does, it accepts the base widget. You go and show that widget if there is no filter or there is no decorators, or I also accept the decorators as a list of decorators. And in the build method, we're just gonna have either the base component or just iterate over that and apply the filter sequentially. Okay, that's getting a bit more interesting. Let's see how it's gonna look like in the code. Now let's say I'm gonna have a text widget that I'm gonna apply different filters. And different filters are already implemented separately. I deal with that in a different classes. So I'm gonna go and pass my simple widget, and then I pass my array of filters, or decorators in this case. Please add padding, border, and background. And when I build that, this is what you get. Now you can go ahead, after you get the code, and play around. Just remove one, add one more, or remove all the arrays, and you see how you're making this more flexible by doing the chain decorators. This one is the most exciting one and also my favorite. Execute around method pattern. I bet all of you have dealt with this problem in any application so far. But let's see how this pattern is going to solve your problem in Flutter. What it says, the pattern, it says in any application, you have some kind of operation that usually needs some kind of preparation and then execution and some kind of cleanup afterwards. An example, network requests. Maybe loading in Flutter and then execute, show the data, and then clean up whatever it is. Or maybe another example could be database transaction. You want to open the database connection, make the transaction, close the database transaction. Might not be very familiar with you in Flutter because we don't really do that much database directly, except if you use SQLite or something like that. But in backend, this is quite common. So let's take an example. I'm going to create a loading manager, the loading concept that I explained. So which is just going to accept a context, that's it. So why I do that? Because then I can create a method here that is going to execute around the operation. I pass my action. So then what it does, it says, hey, in a try catch, just go ahead and show first indicator, a loading indicator. Sounds good. Do the action, whatever I'm passing you. That's a function. We can do that in Flutter. That's a nice thing about Dart. And then at the end, finally clean it up. So these are the implementation of the show indicator and hide indicator. So like technically what you do in Flutter, your navigator pop or for dialog or showing trigger progress indicator. So let's see how we can use it now. In my application right now, when I click on a button, I want to make a network request right now, but I want to show a loading first, and then the whatever the result is, and then make sure that I'm also printing out some kind of log. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I have my loading manager right now, which is going to just call the execute around and pass my network or whatever action that I have. And when I click on the button right now, I hope it's visible, but you see the loadings first, and it just does the print after the operation is done. This is quite useful. You can think about now many use cases, many problems in your application that you can use this pattern. Let's go through another one, strategy pattern. In fact, the one that I'm going to show you is going to be a lightweight strategy pattern. The strategy patterns tells us, like, deal with the context strategy rather than the direct implementation. What does it mean? Please talk to me in English. It means, let's imagine you have an example. You have payment method. In your application, you just want to click a button, pay. You don't care at the end, the selection is credit card, or it's PayPal, or it's X or Y. So you can, this is a context. You just want to say pay, but the strategy could be different. It could be credit card, it could be something else, right? You abstract away again. One of the things you do here is not dealing with the concurrent class of implementation directly in your code, but rather working with the context, which just doesn't know anything about the implementation and how even it's implemented. It doesn't care. It just call a pay method. Let me just give you an example. You define a strategy here, payment strategy, and it's going to be an abstract class where has the payment, and it just needs some kind of amount at the end to just execute that, right? But in your company right now, you have maybe 3 different payment methods. You have credit card, which you can override the pay right now. You can just completely implement your pay implementation. Or you have PayPal, or maybe now they're asking you to add also crypto. The good thing about this strategy is that because the implementation is abstracted away from the context, you can do that anytime and just go ahead and add it to the list of approved payment. Let's take a look at that. Like how? So to use this pattern, you need a context, strategy context, where technically what it does, it's just going to set the strategy. There's a reference to the strategy that you want to call the pay after all. So you have the execute, let's say, payment, and what it does is just based on the strategy that is selected, just pay. From now on in your application, you're going to go and use the payment context. None of those implementation matters. Those are abstracted away. You can deal with it differently. So imagine now I'm going to have a strategy. This is obviously a pseudocode, right? But imagine this is going to be my strategies, list of strategies, credit card or whatever. They're just going to instantiate the, create an instance of my implementation. Doesn't do anything else. And when it comes to the execution, first you can go ahead and set the strategy, and we're going to see the implementation quickly. And then when I say I want to pay right now, I'm just going to pay. Let's take a look at the implementation. Let's say in my application, even in this, I think it's visible that you see there is 3 buttons, which is going to set the strategy. I'm going to pay with credit card. Okay, check. So my context strategy right now is set. And then at the end, I'm just going to click on pay, which if I go back, the pay is going to say payment, the context.execute payment. Let's take a look at that. I don't know how visible is that, but I hope you see that I'm changing, and then I click, and then it says, oh, you are paying with crypto, credit card, or whatever. All right, let's get to another one. This one is actually interesting because it's dealing with the new modifiers of the classes in Dart. If you go and take a look at it, it's so many modifiers. I get you. But there is a reason they are there. It's important that we understand what kind of problem they're solving. And among them is a sealed class right now. What it does, it helps you to, it actually prevents a class from being constructed directly, extended directly, or implement, or outside of their own library. It's super useful. Imagine you are in your team, you're developing some kind of library that you want to share between your teams, but you don't want anyone to mess up with the class that you are sharing with them. That cannot be extended. And another thing is actually interesting about the seal class is that compiler knows about all the subtypes that is implemented. It's, in other words, it is statically ensured the exhaustiveness. An example would be, imagine you are creating some kind of network state to just apply to your network request. You have a network state that's going to be a sealed class, and then you're going to define in your library, you're going to define a loading state maybe, or a success class, or an error and an empty one, like 4 different states. So you have 4 different subtypes of my sealed class. Let's see what happens to this right now. We're solving a problem here is that when, after you are implementing this, let's say you have a network request, and this network request is just going to return different states based on whatever it comes, right? So when you are going to use this class, or sorry, this state, there is no way that you just implement one of the states with the switch, let's say if you use it in this scenario. Why? Because compiling is saying, let's say in this case, I actually removed one of the states, one of the class. Compiling is saying, hey, we found 4 different subtypes, but you're just implementing 3 of them. So 1 is missing, and that's this one. So there's no way that you can get around with this problem. So you have a problem right now. You want to make sure everyone is using your sealed class, are also implementing all of the subtypes correctly. These are just 5 of these examples. There are so many other of them. So like just in my book, I think I covered 15. And still, if we look for more of these patterns in, specifically, I was looking at Flutter framework or Flutter engine. And a lot of these patterns, without saying, oh, we are using singleton or we are using factory, whatever, it's actually implemented there. And many of them actually implemented in a modern way, using functions even to operate when it's necessary, not just using classes. What I want to then say today is use the design patterns as a communication tools, not just only a design tools, just the tools that you, okay, we're going to pick this and implement. That doesn't work. First and foremost, think about what kind of problem we're solving in our code. Because overusing design patterns, it just makes your code dirtier, harder to maintain, and even complex. If there's no need of applying design patterns, it's all good. There's no reason to apply that. Don't look for, oh, I actually find right now one thing in the code. We need to go and do this. That's not going to work. If there's no problem, that's it. Good. You're good to go. And that was it. I think I covered everything I wanted in just 30 minutes, and I hope you enjoyed. And as I promised, right now, you can see the QR code. You can scan, get the slides, and go to the Flutter Engineering example repositories and get all the sample codes as well. With that said, thank you very much for listening. And go ahead and enjoy the conference even more. Enjoy being together.